Despite battling numerous civil suits from victims following his release from jail, Jeffrey Epstein manages to fade from public view until a series of events in 2017 plunges him back into the spotlight.
The nominee for Secretary of the Department of Labor will be Mr. Alex Acosta.
Acosta's appointment piques the interest of an investigative reporter from the Miami Herald, Julie K. Brown.
Julie had been a champion in reporting on women's issues, and she was definitely aware of Jeffrey Epstein and the sweetheart deal that Acosta had signed off on in Florida back in 2007.
You got to put this in perspective with respect to the time. So you're looking at 2007. This was a time and an age where the Me Too movement didn't exist. You know, Bill Cosby was still America's dad. Harvey Weinstein was still a wonderful producer in Hollywood.
Outraged by the NPA and empowered by the recent Me Too movement, Julie Brown embarks on her own investigation of Epstein's sex trafficking charges.
She got the entire unredacted Palm Beach Police Department file on Jeffrey Epstein. She also got statements from the witnesses that no one had ever seen before because they'd been under court seal.
Yeah, I had been just curious about where are these girls now and what do they think about this deal? I mean, and how did this affect their lives?
Brown tracks down over 60 victims, including many who had interviewed with Palm Beach police earlier.
About 5 minutes into it, he took the towel off and started pleasing himself, which I was very uncomfortable with, and I thought I was going to die.
Brown compiles her research into a comprehensive 3-part series for the Miami Herald in November 2018.
It's an explosive investigative series by the Miami Herald. The title is Perversion of Justice.
While the 2007 Palm Beach investigation really, for the most part, flew under the radar of the national press, Julie's reporting on Epstein's crimes and then that subsequent sweetheart deal, well, that ignited a powder keg in 2018.
The attention prompts the FBI to reopen its investigation, compile evidence and witness testimony, and this time, act.
July 6, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein takes off around 9 o'clock in the morning from Paris and lands in Teterboro, New Jersey around 4:30 to 5 o'clock. It's at that point that his life changes. An NYPD FBI joint task force has a clandestine operation set up at the airport by surprise.
He was arrested the moment he landed for solicitation of child sex trafficking and conspiracy to commit child sex trafficking.
United States Attorney Geoffrey Berman announced the indictment against Jeffrey Epstein, the politically connected financier now facing up to 45 years in prison on child sex trafficking charges.
Jeffrey Epstein was taken to the federal prison in New York City, the Metropolitan Correctional Center.
It's cold, there's vermin, there's understaffing issues, there's equipment issues. I'm pretty sure the bathroom in his airplane was larger than the cell he was occupying.
The whole situation was surreal to him, to be locked up like this, in a place like this. He'd never been exposed to something like this before.
News of Epstein's arrest ramps up scrutiny on the financier's many powerful friends.
After Epstein's arrest in 2019, Bill Gates said publicly that he had no business or personal relationship with Epstein. However, it has been reported that Gates was seen at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse several times in those final years.
Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's plane several times.
And Ghislaine Maxwell in 2010 at Chelsea's wedding. And so there's quite a relationship there.
But a spokesperson for Bill Clinton said that the former president has not even spoken to Jeffrey Epstein in well over a decade.
Come on in. Go inside.
Now, lots of reporters are digging in, and pretty soon, a scandalous 1992 video from a party at Mar-a-Lago surfaces.
Trump alternates between dancing and pointing out women to Epstein. Trump gestures to one and appears to say to Epstein, "Look at her back there. She's hot."
In the video, it is crystal clear. You can see Jeffrey Epstein right up next to Donald Trump, and the two of them together are gawking and groping young women. And frankly, it's just appalling.
Donald Trump gets peppered with questions about Jeffrey Epstein, and he kind of distances himself from Epstein.
I haven't spoken to him in probably 15 years or more. I wasn't a big fan of Jeffrey Epstein, that I can tell you.
This is a far cry from Donald Trump's statement in 2002 praising Jeffrey Epstein as a terrific guy.
The reality was that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were close for a number of years.
But the heat wasn't just on Donald Trump. It was also on his newly minted Secretary of Labor, Alexander Acosta. Acosta, the architect of that 2007 sweetheart deal in Florida.
Acosta hands in his resignation only a few days after Epstein is arrested.
It would be selfish for me to stay in this position and continue talking about a case that's 12 years old rather than about the amazing economy we have right now.
President Trump saying today he still supports Acosta.
I'm with him. He's a tremendous talent. He's a Hispanic man. He went to Harvard.
It was a pretty flip way to refer to the abuse of dozens of girls, right? Calling it a case that's 12 years old. And the fact that neither of them actually expressed any sympathy for these girls, these kids, it just seemed really unsettling.
Jeffrey Epstein had asked me to formally take over the case. I said to him that I would do it because I wanted to help him on the case, and he was very upbeat and excited about the strategies that we had discussed. He was looking forward to fighting his case.
Epstein was an arrogant man. He felt that he was not only above the law in every way, he believed that he was smarter than most other people. He believed he could buy everything and everyone.
Will he give up the names of the powerful men he allegedly serviced with underage girls?
One of the options that's going to be potentially available to him is cooperation.
One would have to imagine that a lot of Epstein's powerful friends were squirming at this point. They had to wonder, would Epstein give up their secrets to save himself?
The 66-year-old multimillionaire hedge fund manager Jeffrey Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell Saturday morning.
Jeffrey Epstein's death is all over every television network that you can imagine.
One source tells CBS News Epstein hanged himself.
I was shocked. Suicide didn't seem likely to me. He was planning to fight the case, clear his name. I knew there would be a medical examination immediately. So I suggested that the family send in an independent medical examiner. I've done this before. I suggested Michael Baden. I think he's one of the best in the world.
My name is Cyril H. Weck. I am a forensic pathologist. I have been studying the Epstein case since I was first contacted by my colleague, Dr. Michael Baden. Dr. Baden has a wealth of experience, including cases involving hangings in jails. He attended the autopsy as the official representative of the Epstein family.
6 days later, the state medical examiner releases the autopsy results.
The chief medical examiner ruled the manner of death as suicide. I think that people have understandable suspicions given the background of Jeffrey Epstein.
Dr. Michael Bodden goes public with his own conclusion.
Well, I was asked by the brother, the next of kin, to be at the autopsy. And at the autopsy on day one, there were findings that were unusual for suicidal hanging.
Several aspects of Epstein's death are troubling to the renowned pathologist, beginning with what was found inside Epstein's prison cell.
If you look at the photographs, the postmortems of his jail cell, and you look at how many bed sheets were inside that cell, he's given tens of bed sheets.
He's also got a sleep apnea machine with long electrical cords attached. Now remember, this is a man who they thought had attempted suicide just weeks earlier.
How in the world, if you have someone on suicide watch, would you allow those kinds of physical structures to be present in the cell? How do you think people hang themselves? So this is bothersome.
Examining Epstein's neck abrasions during the autopsy, Bodden notices more peculiarities.
The mark around the neck of a person who has been strangled or who has hanged himself is what we call a furrow.
Usually in hangings, the furrow mark is found up high in the neck, sort of right under the jawline. Because if you think about it, the noose slides up the neck as the weight of the body is pulled down.
It is important to see and note the furrow is significantly lower on Epstein's neck, which is quite rare in cases of a hanging.
In order for Jeffrey Epstein to die the way he died, under the autopsy results, he had to put the noose around his neck himself and had to hold the noose down to near his chest.
Low furrow marks like Epstein's are more commonly found in strangulation homicides. More doubt about a suicide emerges when Bodden looks under the skin.
There are multiple 3 fractures in the hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage, that are very unusual for suicide and more indicative of strangulation, homicidal strangulation.
The hyoid bone is a relatively delicate, small, U-shaped bone high up in the neck, and the thyroid cartilage, the Adam's apple, that's below, lower down. And there were 3 fractures, one of the hyoid bone up high on the left side, and then 2 more fractures of the thyroid cartilage, one on each side.
Have you ever seen anyone that committed suicide and was hanging themselves with those 3 broken bones?
No. Hanging does not cause these broken bones, and homicide does.
You don't get hyoid bone fractures in cases of hanging. They're rare.
Dr. Bodden eventually said to me that in over 20,000 autopsies, he had never seen injuries like this consistent with a suicide, and therefore did not believe it was a suicide.
He believes this was manual strangulation, homicide.
Once Bodden went public with his conclusion that this was murder, it was like a tsunami was unleashed. There were conspiracy theories and memes about it exploding all over the internet.
And as you can imagine, in our political climate these days, everyone's theory had sort of a tone of accusing one political party or another.
The big question is this: who would most benefit from Epstein's demise?
A lot of people were probably happy that he's dead, because dead men tell no tales.
Jeffrey Epstein's death is raising troubling questions about how such a high-profile suspect could apparently take his own life while in custody. But it's also raising some conspiracy theories.
If it was murder, many suspect shadowy forces in the U.S. government.
All Jeffrey's troubles second time around began when Trump appoints Acosta to his cabinet, because the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York started investigating for that non-prosecution agreement given to Jeffrey Epstein.
There was a peculiar aspect to the Epstein arrest at Teterboro that was barely reported. He was not arrested by agents of the FBI with the Child Exploitation Unit. It was agents from the Government Corruption Unit that handcuffed him.
So that suggested to me that there was a political angle to this thing. And there has been a great deal of talk about the prominent political friends Jeffrey Epstein had and other wealthy friends.
So was this arrest really about going after Jeffrey's crimes? Or was this arrest more about going after potential corruption and government officials who helped him weasel out of those crimes?
I believe that Epstein was killed. And I believe that if he was not, he would have talked. And he would have pointed fingers at everyone he needed to point at fingers, including government officials, who looked the other way.
Others, however, wonder if some of the elites Epstein associated with wanted to silence him due to information he might have on them.
We know that he had numerous visitors to his homes. There are accounts of young girls that worked within the home that saw the cameras, that saw the recording systems, that he bragged to those girls about the recording systems.
Many people also wonder if Epstein's private jet, called the Lolita Express, was used as part of a blackmail scheme.
The flight logs that we looked at proved that Jeffrey Epstein was flying with underage girls.
In 1997, Ghislaine says to me, the plane is wired for video and audio. She volunteers this information. Why does she say this to me? One thing that I know for sure is that if you're filming your friends and they don't know about it, you're not their friend.
If any of that surveillance got out, it would be incredibly embarrassing.
There are many powerful people whose secrets might have died with Epstein. But one notorious friendship steals the world's attention even before Epstein's death.
According to Virginia Roberts, she was paid $15,000 to service Prince Andrew. And she services Prince Andrew 3 times in 3 different cities: New York, London, and then the United States Virgin Islands.
Once the press heard about Virginia's allegations against Prince Andrew, they went nuts. Everyone wondered, was there more incriminating evidence about the prince ready to drop?
The speculations about Jeffrey Epstein's friendship with Prince Andrew is increasingly condemnatory. The royal family are held to a higher level of scrutiny. They are expected to be greater in terms of their behavior. They're not just hanging around with someone who's unsavory. What on earth is he doing?
After Epstein's death, Prince Andrew takes to the airwaves in an effort to clear his name.
I didn't have much time with him. I suppose I saw him once or twice a year, perhaps maybe maximum of 3 times a year. But it would be a considerable stretch to say that he was a very, very close friend.
Prince Andrew decides that the way to sort all of this out is to give an interview to the Newsnight programme, a BBC programme which is known for its forensic questioning of politicians.
I mean, yes, I would go and stay in his house, but that was because of his girlfriend.
Andrew said he didn't regret his friendship with Epstein because through Epstein, he'd been introduced to so many interesting people.
The people that I met and the opportunities that I was given to learn, either by him or because of him, were actually very useful.
Prince Andrew is pressed about the incriminating photograph taken with then 17-year-old Virginia Roberts.
I can tell you categorically, I don't remember meeting her at all. I do not remember a photograph being taken. And I've said consistently and frequently that we never had any sort of sexual contact whatever.
Prince Andrew has his arms around her and Ghislaine Maxwell is in the background. And that photo really makes it clear that Virginia Roberts did meet Prince Andrew. She did meet him.
I admit fully that my judgment was probably coloured by my tendency to be too honourable, but that's just the way it is.
Throughout an hour of interview, Prince Andrew never expressed any sympathy for Epstein's victims, for these young exploited girls who suffered so much.
That terrible interview was just excoriated by the press, especially the UK press.
People say he's not the brightest, and certainly if you saw that interview, you know he's not the brightest, okay? That he's arrogant and entitled.
Prince Andrew has to step back from royal duties, and it's the right thing for the royal family to do. How on earth could this man, who had been out socializing with a convicted paedophile, then go and represent the country?
After Epstein's death at the MCC, it has been reported that the FBI approached the prince. They wanted to interview him, and he publicly agreed to cooperate.
However, to date, the prince has not interviewed with the FBI. Those who believe it was murder also point to compelling clues found among the financier's possessions.
After his arrest, the FBI raided his home in Manhattan on 71st Street.
They find troves of pictures of underage girls and nude pictures and possibly pictures with prominent people on them. Potential blackmail information that he had probably collected from his surveillance cameras.
They cracked open the safe, and the safe contained cash, I believe $70,000, diamonds, single diamonds.
To some, another item found in Epstein's safe seems to support the theory that he was connected to international intelligence.
Inside the safe, they also find a passport with his picture.
It was issued by Austria with the address of a crown prince of Saudi Arabia, which is incredibly odd.
It's well known that spies use foreign passports. So the question became, is it possible that Jeffrey Epstein was co-opted by a foreign entity to spy on the rich and powerful and use a sex ring to get some pretty compromising information called, in the business, compromat?
We also know that because of his connections through Ghislaine Maxwell, that he possibly had high-level security information on behalf of governments throughout the world. And there could potentially be people that didn't want him talking about those connections and things that he knew. This is someone that a lot of people didn't want talking.
Although many believe the secret agent theory explains both Epstein's wealth and suspicious death, others find that idea absurd.
But I do know that he certainly was capable of blackmailing people. I don't think he was involved in any intelligence operations. Nonsense. Nonsense.
While there's no definitive proof Epstein had blackmail information on government officials or the super powerful, or that he was a spy, one question still remains.
If somebody killed him, how did they have access to his cell? How did they organize? This was an organized killing.
Amidst a sea of theories surrounding powerful figures who might have ordered Epstein's murder, the question is, who could have done it inside prison walls?
I think if my theory is right, it would have to be another inmate. Jeffrey told me that he was very concerned about being incarcerated there. People were constantly commenting about him.
Someone who is charged with the kinds of crimes that Jeffrey Epstein was charged with, fooling around with 14, 15, 16-year-old girls, is going to be persona non grata even to the most vile of other prisoners. This is going to be repulsive.
The question is, how'd someone get in and get out? Well, I've learned a great deal about what inmates, through their ingenuity, do and not do. People are very, very inventive in these situations.
some close to Epstein quickly point a finger at a possible suspect.
Remember that first time that Jeffrey Epstein was suspected of attempting suicide and put on a suicide watch? At that time, he had a cellmate, a muscle-bound suspected murderer named Nicholas Tartaglione.
Tartaglione was a former cop, 240, 50 pounds, muscular, burly guy.
He was charged with 4 murders and is looking at a death sentence.
Epstein reportedly told his lawyers, who came to visit him almost every single day, that he was scared of Tartaglione.
He said that Tartaglione was on a mission to, quote, rough him up.
Jeffrey had some abrasions on his neck after the first incident, which nobody really ever figured out. Was it a suicide attempt or was it his bunkie attacking him? I asked him, I said, what happened, Jeffrey, that night? And he said, I don't know, I got up in the middle of the night to get a drink of water. I don't remember anything after that.
According to Tartaglione's attorney, when Epstein tried to commit suicide the first time, that Tartaglione was the one who alerted all the guards and tried to save him.
And the strongest proof exonerating Tartaglione for Epstein's murder lies in his alibi.
Tartaglione had been transferred out of Epstein's cell after that first suicide attempt and before his death. And so the likelihood that somehow this big hulking guy could have made his way back to Jeffrey Epstein's cell, killed Epstein, and then slinked off into the, jail nighttime, it just doesn't sound reasonable.
Epstein's inmate suicide watch counselor, Bill Mercy, is one of the last people to have spoken with Epstein.
I probably spent 5 or 6 4-hour shifts in the presence of Jeffrey Epstein, with me watching him. He didn't talk about Prince Andrew or anybody else. He didn't really volunteer information. For a suicide inmate, he was pretty well adjusted. He wasn't a prima donna or a diva. He didn't complain. The only complaint I ever heard from him was they gave him the wrong laxative. He didn't strike me as depressed, but he was really apprehensive about prison life. He was scared. In the middle of conversations, his eyes would drift off like, oh my God, I'm in prison. Am I ever going to get out of here? Prison is not a fun place. You're in your cell 23 hours a day. You shower 3 times a week, and there's mice, and there's water bugs, and it's real noisy, and it's cold. It's a long way down from a $77 million mansion on the Upper East Side. There's no way somebody got in there and killed him. You know how many people you'd have to pay off to get in there and kill them? It's just, no way.
That said, some of the people that Jeffrey Epstein could have ruined with his secrets, they had plenty of money to pay anybody off.
One striking piece of anecdotal evidence that supports the theory of suicide can be found in the records of Epstein's vast wealth.
Epstein, 48 hours prior to him killing himself, if that's what happened, refiles and changes his will to be collapsed into a trust in the Virgin Islands. People in the Virgin Islands that are older, their lawyers advise them, don't file your estate or your will or your probate in the Virgin Islands, file it in the mainland, because it'll take 9, 10 years before people in your will see any of the benefits of that. So this will make it very difficult for victims to get any type of restitution from his estate.
Tying up all his money in international red tape, that very well might have been a final FU to his victims, if in fact he was planning to kill himself.
To all the conspiracy theorists out there about Jeffrey Epstein's suicide versus murder, this is what I say. You're the same guys who think that the moon landing was a fake. Don't be ridiculous. Get over it. He killed himself. You're tripping. There's no question about it in my mind. Case closed for me.
As far as how Epstein died, people either firmly believe he committed suicide or they strongly believe he was murdered. But there could be a third possibility. What if Epstein did, in fact, hang himself and he had help doing it?
Investigators and lawyers have more questions than answers about what happened inside that New York jail at dawn Saturday.
I think it was a homicide, but I don't know who killed him.
The simplest answer to me always rings true, and the simplest answer is he killed himself because he didn't want his secrets revealed.
I think he was ready to sing, and perhaps that's why he was murdered.
The Attorney General of the United States decides to weigh in on this case, William Barr. And he says that this was no murder. He says this was just a perfect storm of screw-ups within the prison system.
I was appalled, and indeed the whole department was, and frankly, angry to learn of the MCC's failure to adequately secure this prisoner.
But come on, Epstein was the most high-profile prisoner in the entire system at the time. What if these failures that Barr talked about weren't failures, but rather deliberate acts of incompetence that allowed Epstein to take his own life?
I do know that they put him on suicide watch, and then inexplicably they took him off. Why? Why would you do that?
They released him within a week. That's absurd. Unheard of. Absurd.
He should have been on suicide watch. But somebody wanted him off who had the juice to make that happen.
He is now by himself. The very next day, we have Epstein found dead.
Epstein had extension cords in his cell block. He had sheets at his disposal.
And guess what? The 2 guards who were assigned to watch him on a 24-hour basis were so tired from being overworked that they fell asleep. It would be astronomical odds that you would have all of those things occur at that particular time in that fashion, especially in this kind of a federal prison. It seems like almost it was an invitation.
Like they were saying, please kill yourself. Here's all the stuff you need to do it.
Jeffrey Epstein was by far the most famous person in that jail at that time. Everybody was interested in what he was doing every minute of the day, everything he ate, everybody who came to visit him. And I'm very skeptical.
Maybe someone very powerful knew that Epstein was on the edge and then decided to just turn up the heat.
Even more shocking to some, the only individuals charged with crimes to date are those at the bottom of the jail's hierarchy, prison guards Michael Thomas and Tova Noel.
I'm Montel Figgins, the defense attorney for Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas and Ms. Noel were on duty at the time that Jeffrey Epstein was found to have died. After the death of Mr. Epstein, there was a huge investigation into how he died and what role the guards may have played in that. Mr. Thomas, as well as his co-defendant, Ms. Noel, they were indicted for making false statements in the logs regarding the checks and the rounds that they were supposed to do. But the system itself is what failed and allowed this to happen. The Bureau of Prisons didn't have enough people working. So the administrative officials were allowing many individuals to work multiple shifts in a row. Now, Mr. Thomas faces up to 5 years in jail. This is very rare that a guard would be charged with a criminal offense in this situation. It's my position that the guards in this case are being scapegoated.
I am outraged that the only two people who may go to jail in the entire Epstein affair are two African-American prison guards that were at MCC the night that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Maybe they should be suspended. Maybe they should be fired. But that they should go to jail, no. That's just not okay.
The question remains why everyone in the upper level staff is able to keep their jobs, keep their pensions, not face any jail time.
We will get to the bottom of what happened, and there will be accountability.
But even Attorney General Barr has a bizarre connection to this case. Remember, his father was the headmaster of the Dalton School, that elite school in Manhattan where Jeffrey Epstein, got a job as a teacher. And it just seems like everybody who was investigating Jeffrey Epstein had some weird, twisted connection to him, which begs the question, is this case ever going to actually be solved?
Another question is whether the financier's alleged co-conspirators will ever face justice.
Maxwell, she's in hiding somewhere. Nobody knows where she is. A lot of people would like to know where she is.
In 1997, or maybe it was 98, Ghislaine told me very proudly that she'd got her helicopter license. And I said to her, why on earth would you want such a thing? So dangerous. Why would you do that? Why would you want that? And she said, for secrecy.
She's a fugitive now. Ghislaine Maxwell is a fugitive.
I would love to see justice in the form of every co-conspirator needs to be behind bars. They belong there. They're criminals.
Now that Jeffrey Epstein is dead and the investigation shrouded in mystery and doubt, many wonder what will become of the decade's most controversial saga.
The Epstein case goes from Palm Beach to New York to the White House to Buckingham Palace, where you have politicians, business leaders, opinion makers, very powerful people implicated in one way or another. Is so expansive. It is a global case. It crosses the political barrier, and it is the longest running child sex trafficking case in U.S. legal history to date.
What's important about this story is the lawyers and the prosecutors and the U.S. attorney who let him off the hook. You can't have this in a society. And Acosta and Krisha, they should be held responsible for what they did.
What this case has, I think, shown is that we live in a society with two systems of justice, one for the rich and one for the poor. And Epstein knew this all along. Jeffrey knew that.
All these people, from federal prosecutors to politicians to prison officials, say there will be accountability. Really? I don't see any indictments. No accountability at all. To me, it's just been a travesty.
Do you think death was an appropriate punishment for a monster like Epstein?
Do I feel his death was an appropriate punishment? Absolutely not. It gives nobody justice, and it leaves a lot of unanswered questions.
The scale of what he did is almost too much for the human mind to take in. We are talking about, at a minimum, hundreds of victims, potentially thousands. I believe was probably thousands of victims. Because I believe those who came forward are just the tip of the iceberg. Most of them are never going to want to come forward.
And the victims are getting zero right now. No more payments being issued, not any money.
And I think everybody wants to see justice for the victims here. If I could wave a magic wand, all of his estate would go to his victims.
How empowering has it been to meet the other victims?
I'd say it's pretty empowering. It's also pretty upsetting to see how many lives he's devastated and to see how long this went on for and nobody did anything about it.
And why did no one do anything about it? Well, if you think about it, Epstein and Maxwell both maintained that there were recording devices in the mansions and the properties and the fancy jet. And there were a lot of really important, powerful people that trafficked through those areas. So, wisdom might have it that there's some pretty compromising video and sound somewhere out there.
I can only hope that someday it leaks out and the guilty parties get what's coming to them.
I felt I was held to silence for so long and suffocated by silence. I gave up everything, and I mean everything, because I gave up my health too. Now I'm very, very sick with a brain tumor. So I'm drawing this project. This tree is the tree of rotten apples. These are the evil roots of the apple tree. Alex Acosta, Ellen Dershowitz, Les Wexner. I put Jeffrey Epstein up in this UFO because he's free and easy flying around. So Maxwell, her pearls and fetching children, it's really creepy. All I wanted was for people to know the truth. And I'm not going to be quiet about it. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm doing the series, drawing all the women, all their portraits, honoring them because they're victims, but they're also survivors. I'm giving them each a drawing so that they know that they matter. We're binding together, and there's strength in numbers. Let me tell you something. They aren't going to get away with it anymore. 2020 is the year that the predators become the prey. It'd be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it?